You're very welcome to this next panel today at Masters of Digital, where we will be looking ahead to the new normal. My name is Jennifer Baker. I'm a tech journalist based in Brussels, and I'm going to be your moderator for this session, which is going to be absolutely packed. It's a focus session. We will be dealing with many issues in a very short space of time. In particular, we'll be hearing a little bit about how to leverage industrial data towards the recovery, the future of Europe, advancing the green goals that are part of the European Commission's agenda. Also, how to define funding for the SME ecosystem within the digital manufacturing sphere, and also ensuring a coherent governance policy for Industry 4.0. Now, please use the hashtag MOD2021 if you want to join us on Twitter or follow us on social media. You can also follow the account of Digital Europe. This is a focus session, so we're going to look at some of the things you've already heard this morning from the keynote speeches from President Charles Michel, and on other panels we've heard a lot about the recovery. So joining me to discuss that, we have a very, very expert panel. We have Kirsten Jorne, the Director General from DG GROW in the European Commission. We have Patrick Hochstedt, MBA from EMEA, Regional Business Leader of Manufacturing, Enterprise and Commercial within Microsoft. Quite a mouthful there, Patrick. We have Alain Dedieu, who is the Senior Vice President of Schneider Electric, but is here today principally as the Chair of Digital Europe's Digital Manufacturing Executive Council, or DMEC. We will hear more about that. We have Professor Dr. Dieter Wegener, who is the leader of the Industry 4.0 group within ZVEI, and we have Christian Bouchoy, MEP and Chair of the ITRE Committee in the European Parliament. Ladies and gentlemen, you are very, very welcome to today's panel session. Alain, I'm going to start with you and ask you to tell us about this Digital Manufacturing Executive Council, DMEC. What is it? Why is cross-industry collaboration so important?
So, hi everyone, and thank you, Jennifer, for having me on the panel. So I would say that first, to come back on DMEC, Digital Manufacturing Executive Committee, we figured that within Digital Europe that the data issue or the data development business was very complex, and we had to be a little bit more specific about the use case and the industry you want to tackle. And I would highlight three, I would say, main difference between what we see, for instance, in the consumer market from what we have facing in the industry. First of all, in the industry, I would say that data is a competitive edge. This is part of the intellectual property of the companies. So it means that data is very much at the core of the business, at the core of the efficiency, at the core of the profitability. Saying that, you will see that a trustful and secure digital environment is the must for the industry. The second difference is that the use case is different. As sometimes mentioned, the consumer market is addressing what type of customer, one type of behavior, and sometimes the data and the platforms knows the consumer better than himself. But in industry, we have a wide variety of applications where subject matter expertise is a key to deliver the best of this business. And finally, I would come back on the fact that even if we compare ourselves to the rest of the zones or the countries, I would say that in industry, Europe is still having a leadership position. We have already started in Europe the Industry 4.0 initiative, and we strongly believe that the digital is going to be the next revolution or next step to bring efficiency. So as such, we are focusing in DMEC on four main activities. First, we try very much to develop this platform, or let's say environment, which is industry driven for data, where we think that we will be creating the next level of efficiency, the next level of leadership, but also new services to create more business. We are facing also with the digital transformation, the fact that sustainability in industry is not anymore an option. And for that, we are very much aligned with the Green Deal. I just remind you that more than 30% of the CO2 emissions are coming from industry activities. And as such, we believe that digital is going to be one of the key leverage for the next step of sustainability and to achieve the goals that companies and governments have put going forward. In order to get this, we are also focusing to bring on board SMEs and a lot of companies in order to bring a fertilized ground for innovation. Innovation is a must, but in digital and mainly in digital industry, we have to have a very collaborative way of developing those innovations between the startups, the large companies, and the institutions, because as we know already, scale matters, and we need to have large-scale investments in order to be sure that we will do development in data that will be both efficient and sustainable and bring the ROI that we expected. And finally, we are also, I would say, driving some convergence in standardization. It's a fact that we have a lot of IT technologies and then IT standards that are coming into the field of operations, as we see in manufacturing, in process. And we have to be sure that the standardization, but also the regulation, are taking into account the use cases that we are facing in industry. Just few to mention, cloud or 5G. I think you're on mute, Jennifer.
Thank you. The one thing I said to everybody else not to do, don't forget to unmute yourselves. Sorry, let me turn to Kirsten. It might feel like much longer, but it's less than a year since the Commission published the industrial strategy. Now, during the pandemic, we saw a lot of businesses turn to digital in order to survive, really. So how can the EU now harness this in the transformation going forward?
I think we have a strategy which is very...
Sorry, Alain, that question is to Kirsten.
Sorry.
Sorry, Alain, but I'm very interested to hear you as well. So what we are doing, I mean, we adopted this industrial strategy a year ago, and it's still very relevant because what we had in that strategy is the ecosystem lens. So the lens to understand better, really, and I have even my token cup, which shows all the 14 industrial ecosystems, is to understand better what's happening on the ground. It also, that strategy also very much builds on the twin transition, the digital transition and the green transition, and where the crossovers are between the two. And that strategy also very much build already on the raw materials, the need to have the right raw materials. Now, what happened during the year made us realize a number of things on top of what we already knew then, which is, for example, the importance of the single market, to have the single market going, because that's the only way we can actually thrive together. So the questions about the green lanes, keeping the markets open. The other thing we saw is our vulnerabilities when it comes to, for example, active ingredients for pharmaceuticals and for vaccines. This means these lessons now suggest to us that we need an update of this strategy, but be sure the basics, they're still there. But we may be looking at certain things, and I'm going to mention 3 in a second, where we might want to intensify or to accelerate. So one is the green transition. It's an opportunity now, and sustainable, as you said, Alain, is no longer an option. We all have to go that way, and that is by now we proposed the climate law, so there's a clear pathway, minus 55% CO2 emissions by 2030. But that can only work if there is a business case for greening. And that business case, we are looking now at all the 14 ecosystems to establish the business case. For example, green steel. The green steel is a business case if you can also sell it, for example, for producing cars. So we need to look at the whole picture. And we need to look also when we have export industries, when they're exporting their products, which is the case for steel as well, that there are also markets for these new, more sustainable products. That's one thing. On the digitization, there is an openness. Even my dad of 87 years goes to church by Zoom by now. So it really went to all parts of the population. And there are new opportunities that companies also saw. I'm thinking of the retail sector, for example. One of the ecosystems that's most hit is tourism. And for the recovery, there is now a charter on sustainable tourism, digital, and it will play a very important role for discovering this. And then there is also the question of our strategic capacities and our dependencies. The heads of state asked us to look into that and map where we see these vulnerabilities in the supply chains today, but also when it comes to future technologies and really managing our twin transition. So these are elements, the green business case, digital decade, digitization, and strategic capacities, where you will find new and updated thinking in our update of the industrial strategy. So that's how we want to capture the moment.
Okay, thank you. You've given some strong examples. I want Patrick, perhaps, talk to us about digital for sustainability in terms of measurement. We hear about the potential. We heard from Kirsten there some actual concrete examples. But is there an overarching KPI, key performance indicator, or set of indicators that businesses can look at and measure the value of digital for sustainability?
Yeah, and hello everyone. So I think if we go into the KPI and the metric side, and I don't want to kind of repeat that sustainability is not an option anymore. That's been said already, but I think, you know, if we bring that into how we measure performance and improvements, I think we need to look at this in a much integrated way. So yes, we need to look at carbon emissions, you know, water consumption, energy consumption, but I believe it needs to be integrated with how we look at return on investment and profitability, all the other measures, because it is an integrated part of how we run business today. And, you know, going deeper on that, I kind of want to say that's what the digital technology is, and, you know, they're all data hungry and data driven. That's where that comes in. So if there's one key message that I feel is important, is that these new technologies, be it cloud, be it edge, you know, IoT, what have you not, AI, machine learning, what they do, which is important, is that they give us an opportunity to optimize across a large number of variables that we couldn't do before, or it's been difficult to do. We cannot just process this. And that means that we can optimize across sometimes very conflicting objectives. So it's not sustainability or profit, it's both. So I think that's the important thing. In terms of the value, we have to prepare the business case for the Commission and the member states in the DMEC Council. We looked at the water utilities, and there we have looked at what can you do with digital technologies, and actually we can improve operational efficiency, you know, saving cost in that, but we can also reduce water leakage with digital technologies. We can also reduce the energy consumption for those water utilities. So it's a very attractive business case, which both makes you more profitable and more green. So I think that is a key thing, that, you know, these are reinforcing if you do it right, and data can help you, or digital technologies can help you do that. I have many examples that I see in my daily work. So I mentioned one, Outokumpu in Finland, and steel mill, to Kirsten's point about green steel. There we're looking at how we can actually optimize both the energy consumption, you know, the usage, which is of course a huge cost in a plant like that, but also increasing the throughput and the yield we get, including improving the quality. And we can look at all of that at the same time, because we have synthesized the data that you have across the business. And I think that is where the beauty is here, in a way that you can optimize across many different things. So that's kind of like, I have more examples, but I think you're nodding, so.
Well, just a very brief follow-up question then. You know, you've mentioned profitability versus sustainability. Are they on opposite sides of the balance of the seesaw, or is it more complex?
No, I don't think they're I think they're complementary, and I think as most companies now have got the wake up call on sustainability, and climate action. I think you have to bring it all together and kind of optimize with that in mind. And actually, for me, green business is profitable business because you are saving a lot of waste in the system by optimizing on the environmental aspects as well.
Okay, well, let's then ask from the political side, Christian. In your committee, we talk about this twin transition. What's the top priority for the committee for the next months and years? And you're on mute.
Yes. Clearly, we have very clear priorities. One of the priority for our committee is to contribute and to ensure the legislative base and also policy base for Green Deal. And of course, the other one, extremely important and relevant for our committee, is to implement our digitalization goals and to support the European Commission ambition and the European and also international partners' ambition to digitalize European economy. European industry is a global leader in many sectors. It accounts for over half Europe's exports and provides directly and indirectly with at least 20% of the jobs in Europe. So both of those dimensions, Green Deal and digitalization, will help our industry to become more competitive. Industrial leadership will be a key factor in the geopolitical geopolitical context, as those who set the standards today are those who will have a leverage on international markets tomorrow. We acknowledge the fact that Europe still lacks a comprehensive and mainstreamed industrial policy. We are still geographically fragmented, sectorial rather than horizontal. For years, one of the main challenges of the Union was to stimulate economic growth in competition with other continents. And of course, we looked for many years to Asia. Also, we were struggling to ensure global competitiveness while also starting and now deepening the green transition. European Parliament, you mentioned also the ITRE committee that I'm chairing, asked on several occasions for an industrial strategy since the industrial renaissance of Europe proposed in 2014 that now needs to be reshaped, of course, in an industrial revolution, taking into account mainly the progress in the digital. In 2020, in addition, the Union needs to deliver towards climate neutrality by 2050, the extremely important strategic goal that we acknowledge and we supported, and also recover now after the COVID pandemic. Deep transformation of our industrial sectors is what we need, and one that fosters digitalization, innovation, and new technologies such as 5G, while protecting intellectual property and reducing the carbon footprint to reach the climate target as well. The key elements of the digital transformation of EU's, in my opinion, represents the way that we see the role of industry and proper investment. Digitalization and new technologies will change our lives. This is clear, enable solutions to many of the challenges we are facing. For example, our ability to collect, storage, and process data by artificial intelligence algorithms will increase efficiency and productivity and strengthen overall competitiveness of the Union, and not only in the industrial sector. EU can maximize industrial performance by combining its technological and industrial capabilities in a coordinated manner and further develop and update the digital infrastructure across member states. For that, European Parliament, we need to make sure that e-instruments such Connecting Europe facility, extremely important, Digital Europe, which will give the opportunity to fund many projects, will receive adequate funding, and we are happy with the compromises that finally were found between European Parliament and the Council. I will finish by saying two more things. First, European industry should not be seen only as a means to an end. the Parliament and the ITRE committee will back the transition to a modern, climate-neutral, highly resource-efficient and competitive industrial base in the EU by 2050 at the latest, with integrated and mainstream industrial and energy policy. And here, of course, digitalization, as I said, is key. And also it is important that industrial and environmental policies reinforce each other and not seen as one subservient to the other. I can assure you, as the chair of ITRE committee, but also discussing with all my colleagues and from all political groups, there is a long-term commitment, political commitment, to achieve the ambitious targets on climate policies with a coherent industrial policy, with a just and inclusive transition, and maintaining in the same time the security of energy supply in the Union on the one hand, and on the other hand, to go in the direction of digitalization of our economies, of our industry in all relevant aspects, from artificial intelligence to data governance, from cybersecurity to digital skills, from high performance computing to connectivity, better connectivity, and of course, from Digital Markets Act to Digital Services Act. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christian. Just wrapping you up there, indeed, because Dieter, we're going to come back to funds in a moment, but Dieter, I want to talk about data, and we're talking about industrial data here. So we've heard a lot already today, and we will over the next day from Masters of Digital Event here about GAIA-X. But tell me, from the point of view of the DMEC Council, what's the role you intend to play? What are your aspirations?
Hello together, and thank you for having me on your panel. As Alain already mentioned, the industrial data economy is one of our big focus on the DMEC. And why is it like this? Industrial data will be the key driver for the green and for the digital transition of Europe's economy and society. And as other speakers already pointed out, there are many opportunities to make Europe more modern, more greener and more efficient. And that is based on industrial data business models. And that is new for a lot of industries. And GAIA-X, if we do it right, gives us the optional rules and trust to enable data sharing between different industrial players. The focus is not on building up exclusive European infrastructure, but more to define trusted rules that ensure data is handled the way the data holder wishes, and that under the European rules. But before we can fully benefit from data-driven business models in Europe, there are some practical questions to solve first. We need to enable the industry, big and small, medium-sized enterprises, to use data. And that is in theory much easier than in practice. Let me give you an example. Our association ZVEI represents the electronic industry in Germany, and member companies are often component producers. For example, chip producers, sensor producers, or automation technology producers. And those components are then often built into machines, and the machines are operated by factories. So in the end, we have three different parties: the component producer, the machine producer, and the factory operator. And if we want to apply new data-driven business models, the data must be shared between those parties in a multilateral way. And this means the component producer, for example, who knows a product best, can offer services also to the factory operator. Therefore, we developed a use case with a research facility in Germany under the Industry 4.0 initiative, where we tried to find the best technical way to do this based on GAIA-X governance. And so what is our wish? The EU should build on those findings and learn from industry's best practices.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to stick with that point. So I'm going to come back to Patrick and ask, what is the role of data in digitalization? I mean, we talk about it so much, but can you go into a little bit more depth about what is the best way to encourage businesses to share it? Because there may be reluctance. This is a new paradigm for some enterprises.
Yeah, I mean, to Dieter's point, the adoption of we need to accelerate adoption of the digital technologies, and that becomes more difficult for our small and medium-sized enterprises. I mean, we represent 50,000 of them in Europe as Microsoft. So we see, the challenges that there are. But I think what I see that the companies are doing is starting to get a handle of their own internal data to start with. It's very fragmented today. So just bringing it together so you can make sense out of your own operations first. I think that's what we see, and that drives a lot of these improvement projects that I just talked about. So that's what we see. The second point is reaching out in your supply chain to your suppliers, see a lot of that, and also to your customers, and understand more about what is your products and services, how are you affecting or impacting your customers. So I think that is kind of the path that I see, and those are some big steps to take, and some investments and train people in your organization. What we also see is these more consortia, to Kirsten's point earlier on ecosystems. We see new ecosystems. We see in particular now during the pandemic, new players coming together using digital technologies, working from home essentially, and bringing new solutions and services to the market. I think we'll see more of that. And of course, that's going to be important, but it requires, I think, that you have kind of clean up your own house first, and have good control of what is it that you have to contribute to the market. What value do you bring? What is the kind of important data for you that is differentiating, and what are other data that you perhaps can share with trading partners?
Right, we have a question from one of our audience members. Umberto Olivo has asked a question regarding how the circular economy is leveraging digital technologies. Alain, I'd like you to tackle that. I know you have examples within the context of, say, Europe's water industry, and about how we can deal with questions around aging infrastructure and climate change.
Yeah, I think first, I just want to remind everyone that the water industry has been the most secure industry of the world since the beginning, because I don't remember who said that, but I will quote him saying that we have the same quantity of water on the earth since the beginning. So, which means that in this industry, reuse, circularity, or in a broader sense, water resource management is very much at the corner of the next step of this evolution. Climate change, decarbonization, but also resource control is very much leveraged by knowing what's going on. And as Patrick mentioned before, the first issue that we are seeing in this industry is to break the silos between the different topics, because the people being on the field are not the people looking at the weather forecast, or the people doing the geology of the ground. And with the computing capabilities that we get, and the artificial intelligence that still to be developed, the data visibility will make possible to take decisions in a much easier manner, having compromise on combined decision between sustainability, efficiency, and profit. And this business that has not been very much a front runner in the past as far as digital has got a wake-up call with the different disaster that we faced the year around the world, but also the COVID. And I think if we provide the right business case, the right tools, and a trusted platform for those data, this is a circularity that's going to be, I would say, a benchmark from some of our industries.
Well, let's move on. I did promise we would talk about money. So recovery funds. Kirsten, I mean, this is a huge, unprecedented amount of funds available for this digital transformation. How do you get member states to go through there are administrative burdens to leverage it in the most effective way? What do they need to do, and how would you encourage them?
Well, I understand that my colleague Celine Gauer, who is heading the team on the discussion of this, is also in this event, and she will have given some detail. Let me tell our perspective. Our perspective from the industry single market policy is not to have the money spent, but to have the money invested. And that's where all the difference is. We wanted to be invested in the right projects, which means we need projects. I mean, one thing is to say there's all this money, but where are the projects? This is the biggest conundrum, actually. And therefore, we believe that our industry strategy, but also the other strategies like the renovation way, for example, the raw material strategy, they give ideas for investment. And they have to create these opportunities for not only bouncing back for our companies, but actually bouncing forward. And digital and resilient and green, these are the areas. Let me take the example of hydrogen. On hydrogen, we had a conundrum that everybody agrees that could be a great solution for decarbonizing, in particular, our energy and certain of our ecosystems. But there is no investment in creating electrolyzers and hydrogen because people say, well, we don't know if there will be a market. And then on the other side, the industrial users, they say, we don't want to invest because we don't know if there will be enough hydrogen. And then in between the two of them, they don't know who will actually store and transport the hydrogen if it were produced and if it were used. So all this you can only solve together. And that's why we have the Hydrogen Alliance, more than 1,000 companies already joining it. And it's all about investment. It's all about having the right projects and creating that investment climate for everybody in this whole chain actually investing. And this is the work we are doing. And there's a lot about governance and everything on the recovery, resilience facility. But really, and this is my message to all of us today, it's about the projects. And I do take the point, and I want to just come back on that, the trust theme. You know, you trade when you trust. When you don't trust, you don't trade. And part of the trust must come from regulation. For example, on AI, we did the white paper and then the consultation, and 90% of people who replied said, we need regulation, either completely new or at least to fill the gap. 90%. That's a strong signal that even if we were to collect all these data, people don't trust the processing. So that's where regulation and policymakers can come in, and that's where our digital strategy, our data strategy comes in actually, and to empower the as you said, Patrick and Alain, to empower future projects for a data economy. And by the way, even in my own little team, we're now pulling together, Patrick, as you said, all the data that we have to understand ourselves better in the first place. What's the data we have and what can we do with them? And we are beefing up our data analytics capacity for the future to better understand also the data that we collect from all the ecosystems to have better policy making.
Dieter, I see you nodding vigorously there with what Kirsten is saying. So let me ask you from your perspective, what are, for example, some of the obstacles that manufacturers may face moving to this data-driven business model? And what can member states or indeed the European Commission do to help manufacturers overcome them from your perspective?
Yeah, that is... So first of all, Kirsten Jola mentioned it already. There must be a use case, a business case for the industry. That must be a profitable use case. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to them. And it is very important to understand the backbone of the European economy is based on the small, medium-sized enterprises and, of course, of big companies. But we have to include the small, medium-sized enterprises. Otherwise, we will fail. So what are the main, there are three main obstacles from our view for the small, medium-sized enterprises, and we hope new governance will not become a fourth one. So what are the three ones? First is trust, that is already mentioned. That means that data is not misused, but also that the rules and liability is still understandable, also for those small, medium-sized enterprises. And here GAIA-X is the key, because GAIA-X rules will create a level of trust between all users in the whole ecosystem. And if from Europe or beyond, GAIA-X has the chance to ensure a trusted environment for industrial data sharing in the EU and abroad. And because data doesn't see borders in the internet, it is very important to handle this in this way. Second is the connectivity, and here the member states must do their homework to set up the right internet infrastructure. And third is the know-how. In our opinion, the European Union needs to concentrate their efforts on building up competences, for example, through innovation hubs and research programs as on the Horizon 2030. In our Vision 2030, every company in Europe has to some degree edge computing capabilities, with which they can access, for example, through trusted GAIA-X networks, different cloud services, or share data directly edge to edge with business partners. And that is, from a technical viewpoint, this is still available, but we need up to set that small, medium-sized enterprises and, of course, the big companies will do the business based and create an industrial data economy in Europe, so that everybody will look at us and want to copy this.
Christian, Christian, let me turn to you and ask you, these are great aims we're hearing from the Commission, from industry. From your side, how do you, promote those aims? What is the Parliament able to do, in particular, in holding everyone to account and delivering on what they promise?
Well, the Parliament has a very important role in defining the best legislation. And here, of course, the partnership, the dialogue with industry is extremely important, because some of the issues are quite technical. Others, of course, could impact a lot. And maybe some exaggerations from only from a political perspective could harm more than help. So here it's extremely important to have a balanced approach, to have, of course, an ambitious approach, but be very clear that we should be in a partnership and a constant dialogue with the industry. We are very satisfied on the political initiative of European Commission. We are also happy with the legislation that was sent to the two legislators. One is European Parliament. European Commission is doing a very good job, and we told that to Commissioner Breton, to Director General Kerstin Ioma, and the whole team, that there is extremely engaged. And the engagement is from the President of the Commission, from President Ursula von der Leyen. She's now very much concentrated on vaccines, very much involved with other commissioners. But of course, Green Deal and digitalization, the two extremely important strategic goals, are supported from the high level of the Commission. But of course, any proposal could be improved. There are maybe some aspects that were not taken into account. So our role is to improve and to support politically what already European Commission proposed. And of course, we have to engage in a dialogue with member states, because some of the initiatives are at the level of member states. You mentioned the European funds for the next years, of course, the structural funds, but also the recovery, the next generation. For instance, myself in Romania, I advocated a lot that an important amount from these funds, and this was also the request from European Commission, should be used to improve digitalization, to encourage SMEs, and also not only SMEs, to become more competitive, to scale up some of the projects, and of course to digitalize, to use this opportunity to digitalize the whole central and local administration. And this also will be in the benefit of citizens. So we have a role to go to our member states, to our constituencies, to our governments, and encourage them to use this opportunity, the funds and also the policy and political support from the EU level.
Thank you. So I see we have a question from an audience member, and we have only just under 10 minutes left. So I'm going to just put this to all of you as a final question. It's from Blanca Sulava. She's asked, or he's asked, what are the biggest barriers that stand in the way of turning the desired outcomes outlined in the European data strategy into reality? So, okay, we've got questions about barriers. I would like you to each pick a barrier, but also suggest a way that the barrier might be overcome. Alain, I will begin with you. If you can briefly highlight one barrier, and also, because we want to be a bit more strategic, a potential solution as well.
I would say that, and I will repeat what my colleagues said already, I think if we want really to develop a digital transformation and go to the next step of efficiency and sustainability in the industry, the main barrier is to create a regulated environment that's going to bring the trust and liability around the data management. For me, none of the industrial people will jump into digitization if they are not sure that sharing data, exchanging data will not jeopardize their own business. Then if we are putting the global environment on that with the right, I would say, incentives to invest, as it has been said, I think we have experts all around Europe and leadership in order to drive, I would say, to strike a very good change for Europe, for the citizens, and for the planet.
Thank you. That's a positive note to end on for you, Alain. Patrick, your thoughts on a barrier and how it might be overcome?
No, I think speed of adoption, to use, and I stay on the digital technologies, but I think speed of adoption, how we can go faster, is one barrier for me, and I think the upskilling and the training is the solution to it. It's of course a big topic, but we need to intensify that, I think.
Christian, any thoughts from your side on a potential barrier, but what might be a solution to overcome it?
I'm not sure that all stakeholders, all policymakers, and mainly at the national level, do really understand the need to support and to go in this direction, this transformation of European economy, of European industry. It is clear that the international competition is very difficult, very harsh, that in some areas we are behind United States and more even some countries from Asia. There are also many countries which are investing a lot in digitalization. I know some examples in the Middle East, and not only, of course, there are small countries, but they are very much taking into account and taking very serious the artificial intelligence, for instance. They even created portfolios for artificial intelligence. And without this digital transformation, our economy in 10, 20 years will not remain as competitive, as strong as today. And with the big issues like now, of course, Corona crisis, economic crisis that will come, budgetary, and also our energy transformation and all the other current problems, I'm not sure if all the governments and all the stakeholders from Brussels are really seeing the importance of this. So not enough commitment for this. But on the other hand, we have strong commitment from European Commission, from the Parliament, so maybe we'll overcome.
And Dieter, give me an example of a barrier that can be overcome.
Yeah. The topic is, again, the industrial data economy. We have a huge opportunity in Europe to set up this on a very competitive level against Asia and America. And so to do this in a European manner, it is very important to be in one boat. So 27 member states should be feel to be in one boat, and so that the outcome will be one GAIA-X approach to set the rules for trust, connectivity, and know-how in Europe, and rather to have 27 minor GAIA-X approaches which doesn't fit together and will create borders which aren't there in the digital economy. Digital economy doesn't know any borders. So we have to learn from GAIA-X setup how to do it in a European way, one GAIA-X.
Kirsten, your final thought.
Well, what my colleagues mentioned is trust, speed, watch the world, and unity. I'd like to drill down the trust issue. And I'd like to mention one word here, which is cybersecurity, which is part of the trust equation. Today, 1 in 8 companies in Europe face cyber attacks. And what's worse is those who face these cyber attacks they face a second attack, half of them immediately after. So it's the double whammy. That's not helping. The cost of these attacks, on average, 3.5 million. That is money we could invest much better in digitization. At the same time, 2/3 of our companies, they're novice to this data economy and the cyber, and including the cyber threats. So that's the obstacle. What to do about it? Well, first of all, reskilling and upskilling, and that can be financed through the member states' plans. We lack today an estimated 300,000 workforce people who can actually work on cyber, and that's something we have to beef up. Also missing probably is standards, and I come back to Dieter's point. We have to put a priority on the standards. Standards, they are kind of bottom up. It's the industry that's doing it, but I think there is need to have a bit of a prioritization here as we move on with this twin transition, and that will also be part, some thinking about it in the industrial strategy in the update. And then we also have to look at our regulatory environment. We're coming up with a machinery directive revision to better include this cyber protection reflex into this. And of course, we're building structures between the member states and the EU, not fragmented, to have a quicker reaction capability. Again, these are investments also for member states that could be financed from the recovery and resilience facilities. So that's my drilling down the trust fund.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for thinking a little bit outside the box, and hopefully all these aspirations will be delivered. I've really enjoyed this rather short panel with such a big area. I particularly like, Kirsten, your comment about not spending funds but investing them. I'm going to use that in some of the other panels we will be discussing over the next day or two here at Masters of Digital. Remember, follow online MOD 2021. Thank you all once again, Alain, Patrick, Dieter, Kirsten, and Christian. Thank you, audience members, for your questions. I'm sorry we obviously didn't have time to get to all of them, but do stick around for the rest of the afternoon with many great panels coming up. And also, it's a lunch break now, but you can go across to the booth area, our digital booths, where you can see over the next few minutes from Microsoft and HP will be live in their booths. So don't go away, and I hope you enjoy the next few panels and couple of days. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.